Hey everyone, welcome along to Redmen TV. I'm Paul Machin. We are here. We are live. If you want to talk to me, you can do. That's what that's all about. You can use the live show chat either on YouTube. We are live on Facebook. Yeah, because we're hitting that demographic. Your mum. That's what we're going for, yeah. And we're also I'm also open to chat from people who are legends over on redmenplus.com. You can use the Discord and it will all feed in front of me. And if you say something good, interesting, conversation inspiring, then we'll feature it and we'll have a little chat through. First and foremost on YouTube here, just want to say hi to Jamie Stubbs, who has joined as a first team member. Thank you so much. And if you've got any questions, particularly you want to ask me about everything that's going on, then yeah, please feel free. I'm seeing some people talking about Zinedine Zidane, and I'll come to that in a moment. But yes, we've got some news stories to get through. They are as follows. Johan Bakayoko from PSV linked again with Liverpool, and his future looks like it's going to be away from the Dutch league. Liverpool apparently reached out to Xabi Alonso for the vacant or soon to be vacant Liverpool manager's job. There's some positive injury news with regards to Dominic Szoboszlai, and Ruben Amorim is apparently on Liverpool's managerial shortlist as well. But yeah, we'll come back to all of that in a moment. So we had a question that was being asked. Vaibhav Singh asked the chat, but also then asked me afterwards. But you can ask the chat still. It says, chat, do you want Zidane or Xabi if you had to pick? And then also just says, do you want Xabi or Zidane or Xabi, mate? This is funny because I adore Zinedine Zidane. Absolutely love him. I've mentioned it in a few places recently. My favourite non-Liverpool player of all time, outfield player, is Zinedine Zidane. It's Jose Luis Chilavert as a goalkeeper. But yeah, Zizou loved him. I mean, for the longest time, we had a Zidane print up in the studio, and even in the Redmen studio for years, we had a Zidane poster on the wall, just because I loved him so much. And the idea of him coming to Liverpool would just be, that'd be class in its own way, because I'm old enough to remember the time when he left Juventus and he was linked with Liverpool at the time, and a lot of the rumours swirled around Liverpool needed to get Champions League football to be able to entice him. But ultimately, he went to Real Madrid, and he was right to go to Real Madrid, wasn't he? And it reminds me in some regards a bit of like the Jude Bellingham stuff, except that felt like it had loads more legs because of the personal connection with the player from several Liverpool players, Trent, Jordan, etc. But yeah, that was back in the day when Liverpool would be linked with these things, but there'd always be some sort of like phantom stumbling block. And the real one was that Liverpool weren't quite at that time really right up there in European terms. Despite winning the UEFA Cup in 2001, they weren't a consistent Champions League team. But they weren't in there at all in the 90s. It wasn't until 2001, 2002 where we finally get into the European Cup. So, long way of saying it, but yeah, I love Zidane, but I still have this overriding thing of I'm not sure if he's a good manager. And this is mad because, so therefore my answer, by the way, is Xabi Alonso. But Zidane's managed for longer, won more as a manager, managed some of the best players ever to play the game, and was at the time of playing the best player on the planet, in my opinion anyway. I'm sure Ronaldinho fans might disagree, but fine, whatever. And yeah, I look at Xabi Alonso and there's something about him. He feels like a manager on the up, and Zidane feels to me, and this is just feelings, like a guy who is, I don't know, just like Real Madrid's the right fit for him when there's all things going right around him and he can just step in and do a couple of bits and pieces. I think at Liverpool you need to be more. Now, do you with the current structure that's in place at Liverpool? Do we actually need someone who comes in and does what and becomes all things to all men? Or can a decent man manager come in with the right coaching staff around him and just be that? It's an interesting question, but it's mad. I'm falling more and more in love with the idea of Xabi Alonso, and that's dangerous because that might not happen, and I'll have to live in that world of a bed that I've made for myself. Anyway, good question. Longer than I want to do, but then also the news is slim pickings, so it's fine. Keep your questions coming in. Rob Fairhurst, Paul, I'll throw this one out. Rob Edwards from Luton. Jürgen said he thinks the most like manager was him. Young, done well with no funds, working within his means, and got Luton up from League One. I mean, I'm sure that will make a number of people in the chat sick in their mouths a little bit, but actually, I don't know enough about him and on what he does, but I've heard a lot of good things. I was listening to the Totally Football podcast last week, and they were talking about the job that he does and how obviously everyone goes Luton and sees Luton play and just presumes just like absolute alehouse football team, and that's that. But he's a pragmatic manager in that he will work with what he's got rather than being wedded to an ideal or a particular formation or system. He's got an idea of how he wants to play football, but he will find a way to make something out of what he's got, which is very Jurgen Klopp like. People have got this idea of like Klopp being like this, heavy metal football, attacking football, blah, blah, blah. I was speaking to Jurgen about this after Kiev. And I talked about his first season and how again, heavy metal football, attack. And he was like, I just had a squad full of strikers and wingers. I played attacking football because like that was what we had available to us. So like it wasn't like he was like, yeah, I'm going to make sure this is my style. Klopp's style is everyone to work really, really, really hard, and obviously pressing, generally speaking, gegenpressing. But actually the other things above and beyond come from when you get better footballers and they allow you to do better things. When you look at like Vincent Kompany trying to play pass and move, tiki-taka, play out from the back with vastly inferior players for the division they're in, that's a bit stupid. Whereas maybe there's something in Rob Edwards of just getting a guy who can get better. But I'm not sure people will be lining up to celebrate it as an appointment. But ultimately, we've done that with signings over the years, haven't we? Where we bought players that seemed less glamorous than the ones we'd been previously linked to, or ones that we'd fallen in love with the idea of. I think we were all in probably at the time of Tino Werner, hard as that is to remember because we've now seen him play for Chelsea and obviously other teams. But then Jota wasn't seen as a particularly stellar signing. Sadio Mane was a similar one. Salah was a similar one down the years. Will that be the same with management? I honestly don't know. But it's interesting. K. Dot says Xabi is the Zidane of the next generation of managers. I like it a lot. Cool. I will get to the news in a second with some really interesting questions, and I promised I'd answer interesting questions. Devanus Banquetas. Hey Paul, is there a reason you don't follow England at Euros or just don't care? I don't care enough. So I used to watch major international tournaments, and I definitely used to support England as a kid. France '98, me and my dad were glued to that, and a lot of that was to do with seeing Michael Owen and hoping Michael Owen would get his chance. It was really interesting watching the Beckham documentary and how the Romania game and Argentina game are framed around him, whereas from our perspective it was all about getting Owen on the pitch and having him score goals and impact football matches, and he should have been playing more. But I remember probably Euro 2004 when they got knocked out by Portugal, and being sat after that game watching England having shot themselves in the foot with the same old shite again, and thinking, oh, I'm upset here, and looking around the pub that I was in and thinking, oh, am I going to cry? And I was like, nah, this is all a bit performative. This I can't do. And I was like, I can't do another tournament of watching England do all the same old stuff. And then that's the era where there's loads of Chelsea players and Man United players, and I just loved Liverpool loads more than I did those, and therefore had a strong dislike for players from other teams. So I didn't like John Terry and Frank Lampard and Rio Ferdinand and Paul Scholes and David Beckham. David Beckham was probably an exception because of the move to Real Madrid. I really liked him, but after leaving Man United. But yeah, that got in the sort of way of it. And then by the time World Cup 2006 came around, I was working it. Sorry if anyone who's turned up for news. This is Paul just rambles what his life, half hour. I was managing a pub in Liverpool when England got knocked out for that, and I remember Chris being absolutely distraught, and I just found that I didn't care anymore. It was just Yeah, it was obvious and it was boring, and I was more upset by the idea that Liverpool players were being held to blame, and I hate that. I hate the fact that England puts our players that we care about into the public eye and consciousness, and it leads them to being slaughtered, and puts them through psychological turmoil by a bunch of people who write their hometown on, English flags and hang them at stadiums and push people into, and bikes into rivers and bodies of water when they're away. And I went to watch England versus Scotland and was sat in the England end through work years ago, and I was the most embarrassed I've ever been being in a football. I was terrified in case I accidentally got caught on camera with a bunch of people singing songs about the IRA and 10 German bombers and all that. Anyway, I just love Liverpool is ultimately the answer. I've only got so much space in my heart for other love. Don't love other football teams. Don't love other sports. It's Liverpool or nothing. Oh, thanks. And I pronounced your name sound as well. Good to know. Right, anyway, should we do news? Keep questions coming in. I will get back to that in a moment. So let's start with a bit of transfer news. This via vertbulkrant.com. Manuel Gonzalez. Only the transfer fee remains to be determined. PSV director announces departure of Johan Bakayoko. So PSV once again battled to keep Johan Bakayoko in Eindhoven. The summer mercato seems to be a different story. Ernie Stewart realises this better than anyone. So Ernie Stewart is, by all accounts, the sporting director at De Lampen Club. He said, although I don't think Bakayoko will play for PSV next season, it remains incredible what Johan does for someone his age. He has played 30 great matches in recent months at PSV and with the Red Devils. Brackets, that means Belgium. PSG, the article writer says, PSG, Man City, Liverpool, Bayern Munich, the list of top European clubs with specific interest in Johan Bakayoko, that's easy for me to say, is endless. So yeah, one that will be on the radar of a number of top clubs this summer. So in the meantime, the PSV treasurer starts counting the money. The market value of the 9-time Red Devil is estimated at 40 million euros, but it's already certain that the final transfer amount will be a lot higher. Maybe first have a blast at the European Championships. Yes, very much the kind of player I think fits the model of what Liverpool do in the transfer market. He's going to be somewhere between 30 and 50 euros, you would imagine. He's young, he's got loads of room to develop, he's already at a decent level already, and he's got international experience. He ticks a lot of the very Liverpool transfer boxes, doesn't he? I speculated that he's the kind of player that if you were going to replace Mo Salah, that's historically the type of move that Liverpool would make. Obviously, no one's as good as Salah. You can't actually replace Salah, but if you're going to do it, then get someone who's got a high ceiling and potentially. But the concern will be, of course, with the Euros coming up this summer. That's going to have an impact, and if he goes and he has an absolutely brilliant one, that's an issue. So if you want to get him boxed, you'd want to be getting him boxed before the Euros happens. Right, sound. AW says, so Klopp wants Bakayoko when he leaving us, and this is an issue. Liverpool don't have a sporting director at the moment. They do have like a head of analysis, and they do have a head of like recruitment and scouting and all those kind of things. So they have a lot of the people in place, but ultimately it's interesting to know who would take the final decision on these things, because we've seen in recent years, Liverpool have boxed transfers not long after the January transfer window was shut. So Ibrahima Konate wasn't 100% confirmed, but like in the know, it was very done around February time. Fabio Carvalho was obviously didn't quite make the deadline, and that was sort of largely agreed after the window had shut. Pardon me. We've seen a few of those kind of things as well, but a lot of legwork gets done in sort of February, March, leaning towards the summer. Alexis McAllister, that was very, very strongly spoken about well before it was actually done. So the question is, who is making those decisions? Are Liverpool going to put transfers on hold? No, it's not the end of the world, because Liverpool have got a brilliant squad, as we've seen, and several of the young players are only going to get better by the end of this season as well. So I don't think Liverpool are crying out for any particular footballer, but it's hard to get your ducks in a row when you don't know what the future's going to look like. was desperately trying to keep that analogy going, and it fell very flat. I couldn't think of a smart way to do it, so I'm just going to sidetrack. The point being is that if you know that if Jurgen Klopp and his team have already got in their mind that they're going to move a player on in the summer, then yeah, bring someone in or have that lined up as quickly as possible. But if you don't, who's steering the ship? Mike Gordon makes sense, but what you don't want to do is agree to buy a footballer that isn't wanted by the new manager. Greatest example of that I can think off the top of my head, and please feel free to put others in the comments. Djibril Cissé, Liverpool broke the transfer record for Djibril Cissé. Gerard Houllier had that boxed, and then he leaves at the end of the season, and Benitez comes in, and you never feel like Benitez truly fancies him. He gets played out wide a lot. Of course, he scores in the FA Cup final, gets injured, broken leg, comes back to play in the Champions League final as well. Bit of a cult hero for Liverpool, but he's never the centre forward that we're quite looking for. And you get the feeling, because Benitez had to really wheel or deal in that summer, he'd had the vast majority of his summer transfer budget spent by the previous manager. So that's something that we need to be keen to avoid. So yeah, really good point there, mate. Okay, let's move things forward. On the Xabi Alonso stuff, so this is from Foot Mercato, and they say, with a nice exclamation point, Liverpool take action for Xabi Alonso, as well as an Aldi advert, which is all pervasive. Santi Auna says, Liverpool reflect on the post-Jurgen Klopp era, and he has already chosen his priority. It is Xabi Alonso. I think he means Liverpool, not actually Jurgen Klopp, but yeah. And this is a terribly constructed paragraph, so I'm going to jump ahead, because I've just recorded the podcast version of this, and I got myself in a right tangle. I also choked on a small remaining piece of an almond that I'd eaten midway through the podcast. Hopefully that will be skillfully edited out. Otherwise, it's going to be me having a coughing fit in the middle. I digress. It's not important. You don't need to know this, but I'm telling you anyway. Welcome. Pablo Longoria, who I believe it works for Olympic, there you go, like the president or something of Olympic Marseille. Yes, president of Olympic Marseille. Says, so I went to see him. He told me no with an elegance, the same elegance he had when he played football, a 40-metre crossbar on his feet. He was telling me no. I should have been upset, but I almost wanted to thank him. Laughs. You see that his brain goes at another speed. So he confided in the columns of SoFoot. He tried to convince Xabi Alonso to join Marseille following the departure of Georges Sampaoli. Alonso declined, and for good reason, as the president of OM recounts. He knew exactly the 3 or 4 clubs he wanted to coach and was ready to wait for them. And he goes on to say that obviously Bayern Leverkusen took a punt on him. It's going really well. They say, in any case, Bayer Leverkusen had the hollow nose to trust the Spanish coach in 2022. Now, this is translated from French. Can any natural French speakers in the comments, can you tell me what does that? I mean, I get that it means, like, because it said the hollow nose to trust is the idea of, like, I get what it means, but is there a more literal French translation? And what is it in French? Could you please let me know? I'm a big fan of the language and the mad little expressions that seep out across them. But anyway, the hollow nose to trust the coach in 2022, whose experience was limited to the bench of the reserve team of Sociedad. This season, they're leading the Bundesliga, holding its own against the Munich Ogre. Love it. I love that. The Munich Ogre. Brilliant. Yes. Okay. Sound. Right, let's move on. We have got another article, which I will come to momentarily. SZOBOSZLAI news. Sort of. So, rousingthecop.com has got this from Bent Boshak, friend of Redmen, and of course, redmenplus.com. Jurgen Klopp's side has had to deal with a whole host of injuries over the course of the entire season so far, and it's not going to get any easier for Liverpool. Mohamed Salah is still on the sidelines, whereas Dominic SZOBOSZLAI could miss another significant chunk of the season. Right, this was the original article. I apologise. This is where it came from. And what I meant to do is click back to the other article, which I can't do because I've got this on screen right now. Thank you, Chloe. It has been written since this. Thank you, me, for finally enough to see my own stupid mistake. Yesterday, there was an abundance of speculation about Dominic SZOBOSZLAI's injury. The Hungarian was unable to play against Arsenal last weekend due to a recurrence of the same hamstring injury, which ruled him out for several weeks in January. Rousing the Cop understands that on Monday, with the permission of the club, SZOBOSZLAI returned to Hungary to see a specialist from Leipzig in Franz Leberbauer at the Hungarian national team's headquarters in Telki. Leberbauer is a renowned expert in the field and has already worked with SZOBOSZLAI in the past, including during his lengthy injury layoff in 2021. He's also worked with the likes of Erling Haaland in the past. However, we understand Leberbauer was not able to diagnose SZOBOSZLAI with the exact cause of his pain, although according to our understanding, estimates of the Hungarian being injured for 3 to 4 weeks are far too premature at this stage. It's more likely that he will return sooner than what was reported yesterday. SZOBOSZLAI now expected to return to Liverpool from his homeland. He will be assessed further at the club's facilities. At this stage, it's too soon to set a date on his return. The club will be careful not to risk him too early. So, what he's effectively saying there is they're looking at the original reports were saying a month out, and Bent, was a Hungarian journalist. He thinks that although it's too premature to say it, it's likely that he will return sooner than that. So there you go. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Yes. Okay. Cool. Right. Let me see what else we've got. We've got one more here before we take some more questions and what have you. This one is, oh yes, another man on Liverpool's managerial shortlist. Liverpool identify manager alternative in case they fail to appoint Xabi Alonso, writes Ahad Shaukat on courtoffside.com. Liverpool have reportedly decided on the top 2 candidates to succeed outgoing manager Jurgen Klopp in the summer. And this comes from, ultimately, journalist Gianluigi Longari, who says Alonso and Amorim are the front runners to join Liverpool in the summer. On X, he wrote, Liverpool evaluations underway for the bench. Many candidates in the running. The first on the LFC list is Xabi Alonso. Among the alternatives considered by the Reds, the name of Ruben Amorim, currently managing Sporting, stands out. As per record, Amorim has established a time frame for considering any suggestions from other teams. Following the season, interested parties will have a meeting with the manager and his agency to discuss the next step in his coaching career. Liverpool are not the only club to be linked with the move to Amorim. The 39-year-old has been previously linked with the Chelsea and the Manchester United jobs. And then Deep Maraman was talking to TalkSport, which was probably fine. I love TD. I just don't like him when he's on TalkSport. Right, okay. So I'm going to quickly find that record article and see if it's got anything of any interest in there that we can pull apart. It is in Portuguese, of course, and yes, I concordo. I agree. The 3 factors that put Amorim in Liverpool's sights, and I want to say brackets, but what the hell are they? Ruben has the right profile. Oh, this is Ian Doyle. Journalist Ian Doyle from the Liverpool Echo says the Sporting coach is well placed to deliver on Klopp. All the way over in Portugal, our good friend Ian Doyle making waves. Oh, it's premium. He's recently associated with Liverpool's technical command to replace Jurgen Klopp at the end of the season. Charismatic coach of the Reds who announced his departure from the club at the end of the season. Exclusive content for subscribers. Right, okay, Sad. What do we think of all that? What do we think of Ruben Amorim? Currently going all right for him at Sporting. He won the league a couple of seasons ago, and Sporting are currently second in the Premier League, 2 points behind Benfica, but they do have a game in hand, and notably a superior goal difference. And really interestingly, they score a lot of goals. Just looking at the table there, Benfica top, having scored 44 in 20. Sporting in second, played a game less, and have scored 53 goals already this campaign. Porto in third have scored just 33, which is absolutely wild. Not as good a defensive record as those other 2 teams. 19 goals in 19 games, which is a fine defensive record. But yeah, it looks like they're scoring their way to a potential second Premier League title this year if they do just that. Okay, got one here from Kyle Hill. Says, hollow nose means not trusted / untrue. So weird one. Okay, weird. There we go. Good to know. It's good to expand our knowledge of random expressions and conversational French. Proper LFC says, is it the groin or the hamstring of SZOBOSZLAI that's injured? So groin was what was rumoured, but that article and what Bent has been saying seems to suggest it's hamstring again. Yeah. David John says, personality-wise, Amorim would be a great fit. Anyone know what his English is like? Because that's obviously another thing that needs to be contended with. I know, like Rafa's English wasn't amazing when he came in, but it was was fine, you know, and it got better obviously as the time went on. Klopp's was great when he came in, and it's gotten even better. Subsequently, Houlier's English was basically perfect at the time, because he taught in Liverpool for a while in his younger years. But yeah, I need to see more from him, and I've not, because this is the thing for me. How managers talk and they conduct themselves is a big thing for me. It's one of the things that actually drew me to Klopp. People were reeling off statistics and methods of play, but I just like the fact that he said fucking interviews. And what I mean by that is, I think, look, I've worked in football media now for a decade and a half. And one of the reasons why I got into this and created this was I find football coverage very, very boring, and how people talk about football to be just too serious. So the idea that a manager just doesn't respect the idea that press conferences are meant to be this really small and boring thing, and if he feels like saying a swear, he'll say a swear. It sounds like a stupid petty thing, but I love that. I've seen Xabi recently coming out and just speaking really, really well, and it's one of those things where I like Ange Postecoglou. I do. I like the fact that, like, the other day he took the piss out of journalists around deadline day, pretending he was talking about the club letting him down for transfers, and instead he was just talking about the F1. And then he was like, I got you. And I'm like, yeah, I like that. Is he a good enough manager to manage Liverpool? I don't know. But I think the Liverpool manager needs to have something about him. You know, Paisley didn't, and I'm not sure how well Bob Paisley would have survived as Liverpool manager in the social media age. Look, results matter a lot. If you just win football matches, it doesn't really matter. You know, Joe Fagan even struggled at the time with that kind of stuff. Obviously, Shankly was a god of it. Rafa was okay at it. Got himself into a little bit of hot water every now and again, of course. It's funny how Gerrard really looked like he had that kind of aura about him at Rangers. I really liked how he conducted himself in the press conferences. And yeah, so Kenny was obviously famously short and spiky, but had a great sense of humour about him. So yeah. Yes, Mathieu Desormeaux, please translate Hollow Nose. That would be great. And Monday is saying Ange being a Liverpool fan makes it even more of a shame that he's at Spurs. Yeah, actually great. David John says Aminim's English is much better than Rafa's. Well, that's great to see. Sir Hubu says, can't understand people talking about the Zerbi. He destroyed Brighton. I mean, that is utter horse shit, mate. Utter horse shit. He come in, got them into Europe, and has made a really good go of the European stuff. And then, yeah, they're going through a little bit of a sticky patch at the moment. But you see that happen with football clubs like that. They ride a crest, then you get an overload of fixtures, and it totally undoes what you do. Klopp's had that in his early stages at Liverpool as well. Yeah. Dally Poole says, Paul, why do you think Unai Emery hasn't been linked? He's a proven winner in Europe and doing really well in the Premier League. Xabi for me, but Emery next choice. I don't think he plays a style of football that we'd really get on with. And I think the way that he manages, I saw Paul Tompkins has he's done some great free pieces lately. If you're not on Tompkins Times, please, I would highly recommend you do. There's a lot I don't know what it is. I think people cling very much to misery and anger, and they like to hear, I think some people just love to hear that it's fucked, even when it might not be. And so they prefer to sit on that side of the fence and live in that. I'm a glass half full human being, generally speaking, so I like to look at why it might not be fucked. But Paul is that, but also does days and days and days of digging into data and analysis far beyond what I'm capable of, and often comes to, I find it's interesting how often he comes to similar conclusions that I've come to myself, but he's done it through much more. Anyway, what I mean is, if you really like Liverpool and you like football and you like being happy, then read Paul Tompkins stuff. But one of the things he's kind of talked about in recent weeks about certain choices of manager is about that, having that X factor that allows you to go above that level. And Unai Emery, I think, is pound for pound in terms of what he's done in his career. I think he's certainly the most almost like trophy laden, the most experienced in that bracket of managers, but I'm not sure whether he's got that thing, that extra zip and zing that you need to be a Liverpool manager. It's not worked for him at those clubs that carry huge expectations. And it's interesting that Paul talks about Rafa Benitez in that, and says how Benitez's personality is better suited to football clubs that look up to him that revere him, kind of thing, because he gets to have his own way a little bit more. Whereas when you go to a football club that where there's additional sort of demands, it doesn't work as well. Like Rafa worked really well at Newcastle and Napoli, but didn't work at Real Madrid. And and as much as there was a time when I'd have had him back as the Liverpool manager, I don't think that happens anymore. Steve Clark, says Tom Finney. Wow, there's an outside shout and a half. Interesting. Yeah. Right. Okay. Look, we're going to wrap that up there. We have got some amazing content for you. We're gearing up towards Wembley. People will be finding out whether they've been successful in the ballot at some point today. Fingers crossed for every one of you that is in that. But if you want to get yourself psyched up for it, we've got loads of content over on redmenplus.com. We're pulling more and more of it together as well, just to make sure you've got access. But there's the 6-year wait documentary, which we produced, which looks back at Liverpool's 2001 win in the League Cup. I was there for that one. Which is very, very good indeed. There is In Safe Hands, the LFC goalkeeper mural story, which is after we won the League Cup 2 years ago. John Achterberg took us round the AXA to reveal the new painting and all the paintings of the goalkeepers, including obviously Quivine Kelleher, and every goalkeeper that's ever won a trophy for Liverpool is on that wall. So that's really good stuff. There's tons of stuff over there. There's loads of documentaries. There is a 5, soon to be 6-part podcast series on Liverpool's League Cup, historical League Cup wins. Very, very good stuff indeed. I've just filmed the latest episode of that with James Pearce this week, so that'll be going out soon. Right, sounds just quickly. GGP with a super chat says Hansi Flick. I don't know enough about Hansi Flick, but he's another one who's probably, and there's saying Hansi Flick would be interesting. I will do a deeper dive into him. I'm preparing something for my channel just on who's won what. And whether it's important to us. Anyway, subscribe to redmenplus.com. Have a boss day. See you all soon. Ta-ra. Hey, thank you so much for checking out the content today. If you want to get your name in and amongst these wonderful people, then head to redmenplus.com. Join as a legend tier subscriber. You're going to get free merchandise codes. You're going to get in our Discord, and you're going to get your name at the end of YouTube videos. Yes, redmenplus.com, legend tier status.